When a young girl is trying to go to bed, she has no idea that her slumber is about to be interrupted in the most disturbing way possible. And then it's time to eat. Hope you guys are hungry. Hope you guys are ready to go out to a restaurant and eat some delicious food. But what happens when dinner time turns into a trip across multiple realities? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
I'm a little freaked out. Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. Hope you guys had an awesome weekend. We got a ton of stuff to cover today, so first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Everyone give it up for one of our legacy Patreon supporters, Tressa. Woohoo! Yeah, wee! Haha! Yeah, she's running on and smiling. She's smiling at us in a creepy, creepy way. I went and saw that movie, Smile 2. I don't know if Tressa saw it. I don't know. Maybe she's smiling because she's happy. It's a beautiful Monday. But I'm smiling because I saw the movie Smile 2. I'll give a little bit of review of that in the middle of this episode for a Dead Rabbit Radio Recommends. I do recommend that movie, but not in the way that you may think. And it's such a weird movie. I can't wait to talk about it. But let's go ahead and get the episode started. Tressa, I'm going to toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. Everyone climb on board this rickety old chitty chitty bang bang car as Tressa drives us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command, taking us all the way to the countryside. As we're headed out there, quick reminder, I will be speaking live at the Port Gamble Ghost Conference in Port Gamble, Washington. That is November 8th through the 10th. It's a fabulous weekend. I will be speaking on the 8th. But if you can't make it for my presentation, come out anyways. Check it out. The whole town is haunted. There's like live ghost tours. I mean, the whole town's haunted. Technically, you don't need a ghost tour, but I went on a ghost tour last year, and they give you all the background of the houses, historical. It was a lot of fun. And outside of the ghost tours, you just have the presentations, and then you have the sense of community, which I think is something that I didn't have for decades when I was a paranormal researcher. Me and my friends would go ghost hunting back in college, but after that, it was just reading these stories online or listening to spooky podcasts. And there really is something about sharing the interest with others and joining these communities. So if you can't make it to the Port Gamble Ghost Conference, look up for paranormal conferences in your own area and go there, join the community, support them. You'll have a blast. I mean, there's no guarantee, right? You're like, oh, Jason, I went there and I didn't have a blast. I want my money back. Well, I don't have any control over that. But Port Gamble Ghost Conference, I will be speaking there November 8th through the 10th. For more information, go to portgamble.com. Tressa's driving us out to the countryside. We're about to meet a young girl, very young girl, 6 years old at the time of this story. We're going to call her Sally. We don't have a real name. Sally said her home was out in a rural area, so very quiet at night. There was none of the hustle and bustle of the city. Maybe you'd hear some crickets chirping, a frog off in the distance, a squirrel laying on a bed of nuts, rustling in his little bed of acorns. But for the most part, completely quiet nights, and that's what Sally knew. And this night was just like every other night. Her parents tuck her in bed. Good night, Sally. Have a good night's sleep. Okay, Mom. Okay, Dad. Me goes... I don't think she's a caveman, baby. Me go sleep now. At 6 years old, you have a pretty good vocabulary. But anyways, the parents are all worried about her. They're like, Sally should be talking like a normal person by now. But good night, sweetie. Good night, Sally responds. Her parents leave the bedroom. Sally says she's laying there in her bed. It's dark. The landscape is silent. So it's even more noticeable than it may be in a urban area. Maybe you wouldn't even notice this. I imagine you would. I imagine no matter how, there could be a police riot going on next door. I think you'd still hear this. I think your ears would perk up because it's so unusual. Sally said she's laying in bed. It's completely quiet. And she begins to hear a... What she heard coming from underneath her bed was the sound of long fingernails scraping against wood. So you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how noisy it is outside, you'd definitely be like, what? That's unusual. It terrifies her, obviously. She's like, what in the world? Like, she recognizes it as the sound of long nails scraping on wood. And she's like, oh my god, what is that horrifying noise coming from underneath my bed? And she's instantly terrified. Not just that, though, she is hit with a powerful wave of nausea. She's not just scared, she's sick to her stomach scared. She's frozen in place, she doesn't know what to do. She does what any child would do in this situation. She's going to call out for help. She's going to call out for mom and dad to come into the room. At the very least, figure out what the noise is. At the most, save her from whatever hell spawn is currently underneath her bed. She hears the long nails scratching on the wood underneath her bed. She's about to call out to her parents when all of a sudden, something begins crawling out from underneath her bed. She turns and she looks and she sees, crawling out from underneath her bed, then standing up and looking down at her in the darkness of her bedroom, a man. But not just any man. Sally looks up and she sees her father. Sally's dad crawled out from underneath her bed, stood up, looked down at her, and say, "You forgot to say your prayers." He then turns away and walks out of the bedroom. Sally's even more terrified at this point. Her mind just can't even piece together what just happened. She saw her father and her mother both leave the room shortly before this. So how did the dad get back under the bed? Why was he under the bed? What was the point of all this? Sally said, my dad would remind me to say my prayers. That is something my real dad would say. But what was this? This doesn't make sense. And the illogicalness of all of it shocked her. Shocked her into silence. She's just stunned. And she said, I just laid there, and then eventually, she doesn't remember, but she goes, eventually I must have fallen asleep. Shortly after this, I don't know if it was the next day or the next week, but she did ask her dad, hey, what was up with that? What was up with the other night? You hiding underneath my bed and crawling out and telling me you forgot to say your prayers. And the dad's like, what? Sally, what are you talking about? And she's like, the other night, you guys tucked me in and you left. And then you crawled out underneath my bed. How'd you get under my bed without me noticing you? The dad goes, what are you talking about? I never crawled. His arms are all bloody from trying to fit under the bed. He's like, Well, that was the thing, too. So she's asked him about this over the years. And she's an adult now, and she's asked him about this multiple times. Every so often it pops up in her head. She's like, well, that was terrifying. I should see what Dad's up to. And every single time the dad goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I know you keep bringing this up. But I never did that. And he did say, he goes, because she just recently asked him this month, October 2024, before she posted this online, she posted it underneath the name Suspicious Orange 71. She goes, just recently I remembered this story and I called up my dad and I say, hey Dad, what about that time you crawled under my bed? And he goes, Sally, for the last time, I never did that. In fact, that your bed was too small for me to fit under. If I did crawl under your bed somehow without you noticing and then crawled out, I'd have been all scraped up just from trying to move through your tiny bed. And I probably would have just gotten stuck. I probably would have just been stuck down there. I couldn't fit. And she thought about that. She goes, oh, you're right. My bed was really low to the ground. My dad would not be able to fit under there. And she goes, listen, logically, you could have just been a super vivid dream. But she said, I remember so vividly, as in it not being a dream, but being real life, the sickness I felt, the nausea. She said that was such a physical response, which is not something we often have in dreams. She goes, the fear I felt, sure, you can have nightmares that are scary, but the physical, she goes, I felt so nauseous when this was going on. So she goes, I don't think it was a dream. She does keep asking her dad about it, and her dad's denied it this whole time. She goes, Mike, listen, to be fair, my dad is a prankster, but he would never keep a joke going this long. He would never keep a joke going this long. Plus, physically, he wouldn't have been able to fit under the bed. And Sally because she's been thinking about this recently. She's been thinking about it for years. She said, really, when I sit and think about it, my dad's fingernails were not long enough to make that sound. So the best case scenario is that it was just some super weird nightmare. It being her father pulling a prank just isn't feasible. He couldn't have made the noise. He couldn't have fit under the bed. He would have had to sneak in. A bunch of things would have had to take effect. And he would have had to keep up the joke this long. Years and years and years. Best case scenario is it was a horrible nightmare. The worst case scenario is it was something else. The most potent boogeyman imagery possible. The creature under your bed. I don't have an under your bed. I might be under your bed later tonight, but as a creepy old boogeyman, that's what I do. That's my side hustle, is being the boogeyman. I don't have a bed frame. I don't have an under the bed. I have a box spring and a mattress, and there's nothing to grab my ankles. No one can hide under my bed. And you go, oh, Jason, is that to save space? Is that to save space? No, it's because I don't want anything under my bed. I purposely don't have... I think it's a racket. I think it's a big scam. I think bed frames... There's two reasons I don't have one. One, because of the boogeyman. But two, I think it's a big scam. I think it's something that some rich guy who owned a bunch of wood back in the 1700s came up with. People were sleeping fine on just mattresses, probably made of hay or sheep or something like that. You're like, oh, it's time to go sleep. We're all sleeping on 10 sheep. And some guy goes, no, I have all this wood. Hey, guys, you know what? Look how fancy this wood looks. I drew some couple designs in it and stuff. Put it on your bed. And they're like, why? That'll make the boogeyman able to get me. And the guy's like, yeah. The boogeyman is real, and he terrifies each and every resident of the planet Earth each night. But look at all this cool wood you can have on your bed. It's dumb. I think bed frames are boogeyman enablers, and I think that they're completely useless. Except for the boogeyman. Actually, now that I think about it, the boogeyman may have been the person who came up with the idea. He goes, you know what, guys? I think all of your beds should have, about 2 or 3 feet of space off the ground, so I can live there. And they're like, what? What's the purpose of having a bed frame? They're useless. They're heavy, and they're dumb. They take up a ton of space, and it allows the boogeyman to enter into your reality. So that's the worst case scenario, and then you have the idea that it's just mimicking her father. And not just that, whatever was down there took the shape of her dad. But then also, you forgot to say your prayers, is what this entity said, which seems almost blasphemous. Because this definitely wasn't her father, and I doubt whatever this was actually concerned about her not praying. I don't think it was a guardian angel. I was like, better remind Sally. I can almost guarantee, though, she never forgot to pray after that night. But it seems blasphemous that this creature, this entity, brought up prayer. And the fact that she was nauseous, it does give us a clue that this was a real story and not a dream. But it's also something we see in very, very potent paranormal experiences, is a wave of nausea. Because really, at the end of the day, you're not going to get it every single time. Every time you see a ghost, every time you see a cryptid. But you do get them from time to time, because what we're looking at is reality is so distorted. It's like you're standing on a cliff. Because you're standing on a cliff between the real and the unreal. Sanity and insanity. And you get that nausea that people get when, and I'm not just talking about like a 30-foot drop. I'm talking about like, it's a 10,000-foot drop. You get hit with that wave of nausea. It's a physical component. It's beyond fear. Your body's reacting to something that is truly unreal. It should not exist. You don't get it with every single paranormal experience, but when it does happen, that means that what's going on is beyond the pale. Trust someone to toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. Everyone climb on board. We're going to leave behind this rural area. Why don't you fly us on out to the shopping mall? I want to talk to you very briefly about the movie Smile 2. I saw that at the movie theater this week, and it might be one of the most miserable experiences I've had in a movie theater. I think I would have to look all the way back to Cabin Fever, when Cabin Fever first came out, for a parallel to this. I loved Smile 2. Dead Rabbit Radio recommends Smile 2 for sure. It is creepy, and it has jump scares, but I feel like they're the right kind of jump scares. They're almost disorienting, the type of jump scares they do, because the whole movie is about reality warping. So even the jump scares were like warping reality. I liked the first one. I think this one was better. I felt that this movie it was all Technicolor. It's about a pop star singer who's being hunted by the smile demon, who makes all these doppelgangers of smiling people walk around you, and it's slowly driving you mad. It feasts off your fear until eventually it possesses you and then makes you kill yourself in front of somebody else. And that person who's now has this horrible trauma, now the smile demon is attached to them. The whole process takes 4 to 7 days. It's a very, very quick working demon. Got a lot of stuff to do. Doesn't have time to waste. This movie was so miserable. It did what I think I really like Long Legs. That was a horror movie that came out a couple months ago. But this movie I think was more successful, and it created just this very miserable feeling. You're like, Jason, quit using that word if you recommend it. Here's the thing. I was watching it. First off, I caught an early showing of it. I was the only one in the theater. And at this point, I'm almost convinced that theater's haunted. Because the entire time, I could hear someone a couple rows back behind me, and I would kind of turn and look just to make sure no one walked in, but I would hear stuff behind me. It is a horror movie. It has jump scares. By the end of the movie, whatever was behind me up a couple rows was sitting in the row behind me. To the point that at one moment, I whipped my head around real quickly because I truly thought there was someone behind me. Every other time, I kind of turned around slowly because I really didn't want to see anything, and I knew there wasn't anything there. I just had to convince my reptile brain that there wasn't. But towards the end, it was like I whipped my head back. There was no one there. And the second the movie ended, I grabbed my popcorn and my soda and I ran out the door. The same way, late at night when you got to go down the long hallway back to your room and the living room is now pitch black, how you kind of rush out. So that kind of amped up the feeling. The reason why I say it's miserable, it's because it's mental torture porn. There's really, for the most part, one victim. The lead character, Sky Riley. She's a pop star, like a Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga type megastar. And she's just beaten down throughout the whole movie. And I'm watching it and I go, dude, even the people... I remember thinking this as I'm watching the movie. I go, even the people in Hostel, eventually they die. They get tortured for maybe 5-10 minutes and then it's done. I go, this is 2 hours of watching this entire woman's life fall apart. But here's the thing, it's so well done. It's a fantastic horror movie because you feel so bad for that character. And you really go, she doesn't deserve this. And a lot of people in horror movies don't deserve their fates. Some do. Some movies say this is the reason why these people are getting killed one by one. But really, you're like, she doesn't really deserve this. And it's so heartbreaking, which means great acting, great script. Like, it did what it needed to do. On top of all that, it's gory. It's scary, it's creepy, the jump scares are super effective. So if you're looking for something creepy to watch this Halloween, and you're already not in the best of moods, You're like, you know what? I need a downer. Smile 2. Check it out. Again, you don't have to see the first one to watch the second one. It's a direct sequel. It takes place 6 days after the first movie. You can watch them back to back, and I think that would be super effective. But I really liked this one. Dead Rabbit Radio recommend. I really liked the first one too, but this one was amazing. I have no idea how they're going to do a third one, man, because the way this one ends, you're like, oh, okay. You could go 100 different ways for a third one in a good way. So Dead Rabbit Radio recommends Smile 2. If you're looking for something spooky to see, check out Smile 2. Stream it when it comes out, but I would recommend going to see it at the theater. Maybe not a haunted theater, but unless you really want to, give yourself a heart attack.
We have to end it. No matter what. You're not in control. I need to stop it, but I don't know how.
Tries to go ahead and land the Carpenter Copter at this mall. The year is 2016. We're about to meet this young woman. Her and her husband, they're new in town. They recently moved to this area, and they're like, oh, you know what? Let's go out. We've heard great things about that local restaurant. Let's go. Now, Jackie didn't give the name of the restaurant. In fact, she was a little cagey about giving out that information, which could point to the story being made up because it's hard to verify if there's not a lot of facts. It could also, though, if this isn't a chain restaurant, if it's because a lot of people were interested in the story, they wanted to try to research it for themselves. She didn't want to give out a lot of information because a lot of people don't want to get doxxed. Obviously, if the restaurant is McDonald's, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But we have a place in town called the Trillium Cafe here in Hood River. If it was a restaurant like that, they would know exactly where she lives. So I understand her being a little bit cagey. I wish there was more information to research this myself or to look into it, but we're going to call this restaurant Bongos. Okay? I don't know if it's like a nice Italian restaurant. I don't know if it's like a Chili's type restaurant, which is the best type of restaurant, but we're going to call this place Bongos. So anyways, Jackie and her husband, they're new in town, and they go, we've heard a lot of good things about Bongos. Like, Jason, why'd you pick the dumbest name possible? Sounds yummy. Bongos. They go, you know what? We've heard great things about that 5-star Michelin restaurant, Bongos, where the bear works. Let's go eat at Bongos. So, Bongos, I probably shouldn't have picked such a ridiculous name. Sorry. But anyways, I just imagine like a guy in a giant suit. It's like a Chuck E. Cheese type restaurant. Imagine it's a fancy restaurant. Well, the restaurant's in a mall, so as fancy as a restaurant can get in a mall. They go, dude, let's go to Bongos. Bongos is at the mall, so that'll be cool. Maybe get a little shopping done. We've heard such good things about Bongos. Let's go. So Jackie and her husband, they go to the mall. They walk in. There's reservations only for Bongos. The maitre d's like, oh, are you on the list? In his French accent, oh, ooh la la, I see there is a husband and a wife here. Maybe you would like a special table at Bongos. They go to Bongos, they have a delicious meal. It's fantastic. It's everything that they had heard Bongos was. All the rumors were true. Great time, great food. Pass on the alcoholic drinks, though. Jackie and her husband are like, we don't feel like drinking tonight. Let's just have some delicious food and soak up the atmosphere. Well, anyways, after they pay and they leave, they get in their car to drive home when all of a sudden a car speeds by them. And Jackie looks at her husband and her husband looks at her. And even though they didn't get hit, even though the car accident didn't happen, they were both so shooken up by it. Man, whoa, that was close. Oh, I know. Oh, man, good thing we have these bongo bags. Good thing we got extra bongo fries. I'll eat these. They'll make me calm down. Yum, 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 yum. It was such a close call, they were really shaken up by it. It wasn't like some crazy driver just kind of veered into their lane. They actually barely avoided if not dying, being seriously, seriously injured in this car accident. Well, the next day, Jackie and her husband meet up with some friends, and Jackie's like, oh yeah, no, we went to that restaurant last night. Bongos? You guys know about bongos? And the friends are like, bongos! They're all doing the theme song. The Frenchiest restaurant in town, with the maitre d' who never wears a frown, and the Mithra cheese is always buttered brown. And the bread, they're like, okay, we get it, Jason, we get it. The bread sticks are the best around. They get paid every time they sing this jingle. They're like, yeah, bongos. We went to bongos last night. That was delicious. Everything we heard about bongos was great. The friends are like, oh, yeah. Yeah, bongos is fantastic. We go there all the time, too. But when Jackie and her husband are talking about bongos with their friends, they're like, yeah, dude. So we drove on down to the mall because we had to do some shopping. So it was super convenient. Bongos was right there. We go into the mall, grab some food, sit down. It was fantastic. The friends are like, what? What are you talking about? Jackie's like, the mall, bongos. We just talked about this. You guys just sang the song, remember? And the friends are like, yeah, we know about bongos. Bongos is delicious. It's the best breadsticks in town, but it's not at the mall. Jackie's like, no, it's in the mall. Are there two bongos? And the friends goes, no, there's only one bongos. There can only be one bongos. But it's actually on the other side of town. It's the opposite side of town from the mall. So did you go... I mean, it's okay if you traveled around, but you went to the mall and then you went to bongos, like you got in your car and drove across town. And Jackie and her husband are like, no. We had the... Bongos is at the mall. And the friends are adamant. They say, bongos is not at the mall. Bongos is across town. It's always been there. There is no bongos at the mall. There's only one bongos, and it's over there. And this gets so frustrating. It's not like they broke out into a huge fist fight, but Jackie and her husband start thinking, they go, what are they talking about? So they decided, you know what, let's go back to the mall. Because here's the thing, they know these people, their friends, is not just some like local crackhead walking around being like, bongos is in the sewer. I eat a bongos every night. It tastes like wet rat. They're like, well, that's super weird. So they actually go back to the mall. They also probably want to get more bongos. They go back to the mall and they walk into the mall and they realize bongos is not in the mall. And they're like, dude, what? Like, this is impossible. Like, we came here, we shopped here, we ate here, and we left. Where's bongos? Well, then Jackie and her husband go, okay, this is super weird. Let's drive over to where they said bongos was. Even though we know it's not there, even though we know it's in the mall, even though we can't find it now, let's drive over to the other side of town. So they do. They drive to the other side of town, and as they're driving down the road, they see the bongos sign. They pull in, walk into the restaurant. The layout is exactly the same as the bongos in the mall. They sit down, they order food. It tastes exactly like the food from bongos in the mall. So this is really kind of messing with their head. Jackie and her husband, who I never gave a name to, I don't know, let's call him Clark, this far into the story. Jackie and Clark, it's really messing with their head because they're like, we do remember going to the mall to eat bongos, yes. Well, you know what? I paid with a credit card that night. Let's look it up. Because they know they ate. And they know they ate at bongos. So they go online and they look at the credit card statement. And they never got charged for that meal at bongos. The bongos in the mall. They have a more recent charge from this time they went to bongos. But on the night of the mall, the restaurant in the mall, their credit card shows no charge. Even with credit cards, it can take a couple days for it to post. Nothing. It's never appeared on any of their credit card statements, that first trip to bongos in the mall. This happened 8 years ago. She posted about this online back in August of 2024. So she's been thinking about it on and off over the years. She posted it online underneath the name Rose Nor 4. Rose Nor 4. And she says, I think about it from time to time. It completely puzzles me as to what it could possibly be, and I'll sit there and I'll really try to figure it out. However, she says that when she does start to think about it, I like the way she described this. She says she gets a, quote, eerie, uncanny feeling and have to stop, unquote. So it's like her brain doesn't even want her to think about it. It's kind of going back to the nausea that Sally felt in the first story. Your brain has limiters on it. Your brain has things that basically prevent you from getting certain information or recalling certain information. That's why babies, they're constantly looking at everything and their heads moving everywhere and they're just wiggling the whole time. They're sensory overload. We learn to mute out certain sounds, certain colors, certain feelings, because otherwise we would just be overwhelmed. We remember every single thing we see, but we can't recall all of it. But it's all recorded. But when you're trying to tap into something that breaks the laws of the universe, in this case, a restaurant teleporting from one end of town to the other, her brain's just like, dude, stop thinking about this. But it could also be the universe trying to... She used the term gaslighting. She says, I feel like the universe and reality is gaslighting me. It's trying to make me convince something that I know isn't true. But everything that I see, it does show Bongos is on the other side of town. I just, like, if I sit and think about it, because I know for a fact we ate at Bongos in the mall, and if I think about it being on the other side of the town, which I know where it's really at, my brain, it gets so weird. It just messes with my head so much that I have to stop. Because you really are seeing something that doesn't exist. It's really no different than seeing a ghost, but in a way it might be more mind-breaking, because I think you could go, yeah, sure, ghosts probably exist. As a paranormal researcher, I know there's a lot of people out there who don't believe in ghosts who listen to this podcast. If you don't believe in ghosts, and you listen to this podcast, which is a sizable part of the audience, honestly, and you saw a ghost, I don't think it would necessarily break your brain. You would go, you might try to find a skeptical answer for it, but it wouldn't make you question all of reality. But if you went to bed in a blue bed and you woke up and your bed was now pink, that would mess with your sense of reality. You would have known for the past 10 years you had blue pillows and a blue sheet, and you wake up and it's pink pillows and a pink sheet, and you know that's not real. But anyone else says, no, you've always had pink pillows and a pink sheet. That would mess with reality. That actually would, I think, start to affect your sanity. I will say this, too. I was looking more at, when I went back to the post to get her username, and while I was telling the story, she says and this is another interesting... You could say, well, she's making the story up, Jason. Or you could say, oh, that's an interesting take on the reality. People, I said maybe she doesn't want to get doxxed, I was looking more at my notes and looking more at what she wrote. And someone asked, what's the name of the restaurant? And she goes, honestly, this was 8 years ago, and I don't really remember the name of the restaurant. And you go, well, Jason, then she's obviously making it up. If reality split in two, I think you would remember whether or not it was a Carl's Jr. or a Taco Bell. I would agree with you, and that could be a sign that the story's made up. But I would also argue, if her brain is having such a hard time even processing the Bongos not being at the mall, her brain could just be trying to forget the whole thing altogether. I've gone on ghost hunts with people, and they've experienced paranormal activity, and they've seen paranormal activity with me standing next to them. And that night, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I saw that thing. That was insane. I was like, I know. And then a year or two later, I brought it up, and they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, the ghost, the 7-foot-tall shadow man who attacked Chris Ewart? No, I don't remember that. I go, dude, you were there, and we talked about it for weeks after the fact. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. As he's sweating as a shadow man is again ready to punch him if you admit I exist. I'm gonna punch you. I'm gonna punch your shadow. I think the brain has a way of just trying to ignore all this stuff to try to move on. Let's wrap it up like this. I thought this was super fascinating. There was a Reddit user going by the name Typical View had an interesting theory that Jackie and her husband Clark did eat at the bongos in the mall. And as they were leaving the mall, they died in a car accident. Now it's very interesting, when she told this story, she did not talk anything about multiple realities or the multiverse or anything like that. She did just mention we almost got in a car accident and then never really brings it back up. I think it just added to the weird story of the night because it was that much of a close call. Typical View thinks, and this is a reasonable theory, they died in a car accident. In one reality, in Bongos in the Mall reality. But they shifted to another universe where everything was pretty much exactly the same. It's a mirror image in a lot of ways. The closest universe reality could find for them, where they didn't die in a car accident, but they still felt, that's why they were so shaken up. That's why they were like, oh my God, that was such a close call. Because their physical bodies died in one reality, and in a split second they were in another reality, and their soul, their essence shifts over, but they're still reeling with the possibility that they were T-boned or rear-ended and just completely mangled beyond comprehension. Now all of a sudden you're not, and you know that feeling. I've had that feeling too, those close calls where you actually have to feel like you catch your breath. You're like, wow, that was a close call. You died in one universe, you shifted to another universe where you're still alive. And so when they shifted to this other universe, everything was pretty much the same, except Bongos was on the other side of town. And it had always been on the other side of town. That's why the credit card never showed the charge. That's why no one else remembered the Bongos in the mall but them. Because they're the only people who came over from that reality. It's possible when we look at the theory of the multiverse, that's definitely possible. Because although universes can be quite similar, you think about it, if you died tonight and you shifted to another universe, you wouldn't know whether or not down in Charlotte, North Carolina, there was a bar called Bama, and now that exact same bar is called the Gator Lake. Everything else in the universe is exactly the same as you knew it before you died, but it's such a small change in a place that you'll never even experience. You would never know. The only time you would pick up on it is when it's something that you did know that was different. In this case, the Bongos changed locations. And then I started thinking, let's put on our conspiracy caps to wrap this episode up. I had a horrifying vision. Of course, of multiverse shenanigans. I thought, okay, so yeah, let's take that theory. This isn't the first story that's popped up. This is where the Mandela effect comes from. Quantum immortality gone rogue. Being shifted into another universe where things don't add up. They're not what you remember. But most of the time you wouldn't notice the differences. I started thinking about it. I go, what if that explains why we misplace things? This is something we've done. All of us go through it. I come home, I take my wallet out, I put it on my table. I go to the bathroom, come back out, sit down, watching YouTube on my computer. A couple hours later, I decide to go grab some ice cream. I go to grab my wallet off the table. It's not there. I'm looking. Where did I put my wallet? And then I'm checking the pockets of the clothes I wore. It's not there. And then I start checking the pockets of clothes that I haven't worn for a day or two. But I was like, I know I have my wallet. Where is my wallet? And then I find it, and it's on my weight bench, which is probably about 3 feet away from my table. And I go, I must have put it on the weight bench. I scoop it up, put it in my pocket, go to grab some ice cream. They're like, Jason, you have to make a choice. You either own a weight bench and lift weights, or you eat ice cream. Make a choice. Well, anyways, I sit on my weight bench. I'm all eating an ice cream cone. Yum, yum, yummy. Ice cream's dripping all over my weights. They're extra slippery now. And we go, oh, we just misplaced it. Oh, I must have put it down on the weight bench. I thought I put it down on my table, which I always do. I put it down on the table all the time. We've been through that. I could give you 1,000 examples. I know I put my shoes here. Where are my keys? I could have sworn I put my keys up here. It doesn't happen every single day, usually. It can happen maybe a couple times a month. What if that is, I walked into my living room, I threw my wallet down on the table, I went into the bathroom, and the heater I have plugged into the wall, because I can't stand any variance of temperature, it always has to be warm when I'm around, not too hot, not too cold. There's a leaky faucet, there's water underneath the heater, the second I plug it in, I get electrocuted, I die. I immediately shift over to another universe, and everything's exactly the same, except I dropped my wallet on the weight bench. And we never think of that, right? We just go, oh, I must have just moved my wallet to the weight bench. We do that, like I said, that happens probably to me. I'm pretty good at storing stuff in certain areas, but it probably happens to me, I don't know, a couple times a month. It's not super common. But what if each time it's because it's not that I actually put it somewhere else, it's that I died and shifted to another universe, and the only difference that I can perceive between the two universes is I put the thing one place as opposed to finding it in another. And then, this is where it gets creepy. What's one thing that, as people get older, they constantly complain about? Their memory. I mean, they complain about a lot of stuff, but everyone does. That's not an age thing. That's not a generational thing. But as people get older, as you get older, I'm old. I'm 48 now. You do start to forget things more often. And it may be not just a couple times a month, but for people as they get older and older, it may be something they have to deal with every week. Where did I put my keys? Where is my wallet? Where's my shoe? I know I put my shoe right here. And it gets to the point where their loved ones, they have to start trying to mitigate these things, like buying grandma a little key ring hole that magnets, a little key ring hook that magnets to the fridge, or a little thing to put her pills in so she remembers what pills to take on what days and where they go, and all of these things. We try to help as people lose their memory, and we try to help as people become more and more forgetful. Where did I put this? Where did I put that? I know I put it here. And the reason why it's happening more and more the older you get, because you're dying more often. For me to die right now would have to involve some sort of freak accident or violent homicide. I've just went through a full health checkout, electrocardiogram, stress test, all of this stuff, x-rays, full physical, all this blood work. I'm as healthy as a horse. A 48-year-old horse, sure. But they say your heart is as healthy as it was in 2018. Your heart basically hasn't aged in the past 6 years. And I was healthy back in 2018, so I'm not too worried about things. The only way I would die right now is through a freak accident or a violent homicide. So the chances of me dying in a freak accident may be a couple times a month. Slipping and falling in the bathroom, breaking my neck out on a walk, being viciously attacked by 3 dogs, because anything less than 3, I'm going to win. I'm going to win, trust me. I'll put that episode in the show notes. And then someone kicking down my door in the middle of the night, beating my head in with a ball peen hammer. May happen a couple times a month. But when I'm 68 and I'm having a heart attack in the middle of the night, a stroke, attacked now by only 2 dogs, I've lost some of my fighting spirit. Now 2 dogs can take me. Slipping in the bathtub, mixing up my medication. Now I may be losing stuff or forgetting where I put stuff, not just several times a month, but several times a week. And now I'm 88. And I'm basically dying 4 out of 7 days of the week. Heart attack, stroke, aneurysm, falling, getting crushed by something. 2 cats, right? Not even dogs. I've been reduced to fighting cats at this point. And I can't remember where I put my shoes or my keys in the same day because I died twice. And at this point, I'm shifting reality so quickly that it's almost like a blur. It's terrifying theory, right? Total theory that I came up with when I was reading this story. I thought, what if there is a connection between the two things? Not just memory. I'm not talking about Alzheimer or dementia or anything. Well, to be fair, I would argue, I know dementia is a medical thing. But shifting through the multiverse 3 or 4 times a day is probably going to make you a little bit unfocused, to say the least. It might make you, but dementia and Alzheimer's is a separate thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the forgetfulness of things. Not the medical conditions of dementia or Alzheimer's, but just forgetting normal everyday things. That becomes more and more of a struggle the older and older you get. And it may not just be like, oh, I'm forgetful because I'm old. It may be that you're dying so many times in a week. You're shifting so quickly, you don't know where your keys are because where you put them is 4 deaths ago, which may be 12 hours ago. You're dying at such a rapid rate, you're just shifting around. You put your keys on the table, you find them on your dresser. Between the time you put the keys on the table, you've already died 3 or 4 times. You slipped in the living room and bashed your head in. You had a stroke as you were bending over to pick up a penny you found on the ground. You drowned in your bathtub. And you were preparing food and you accidentally slit your wrist open. All in a day of your time. The keys are long gone. The keys you put on that table are long gone. Terrifying theory. Terrifying theory that combines the natural progression of age, the natural event of death, with the supernatural theories of the multiverse. The chaos that must come, being shifted around into a reality where you're still alive, must just be disorienting, to say the least. And sanity breaking, to say the most. Is that a phrase? Do people say to say the most? Terrifying theory, though. I thought about that. This story is just a young couple who died in a car accident, possibly, were shifted to another reality where the restaurant they loved was on the other side of town. But does it have a meaning for the rest of us? Is there something we can take out of that? That being the theory that every time you forget where something is and then you find it in a different location, it's not because oh man, I guess I left it here instead. You pick your keys up and head out the door. It's because you died. Somehow, between the time you put your keys down and the time you found them in a different location, you actually died and have now been shifted to a new reality. That is almost a perfect replica of the reality you used to know. The only thing that you really notice is that your keys are in a different location. And if that's the case, what does happen as we get older? As we get closer to death, more prone to accidents, more likely to have major health problems. Is the story of Jackie and Clark a one-off story about a multiverse that shifted a local restaurant? Or is it a bleak reminder of the madness that we will all experience more and more each day we get a little older and more susceptible to the specter of death that waits for us all? DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day. I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great day.